On today's show, we are going to discuss the current pricing in 7 of the bettable awards markets. Important note, we are looking at FanDuel here on screen for those watching on YouTube, and we'll mostly discuss FanDuel lines. But one of the reasons this market is so soft is because there are wildly different lines across different books. Please be sure you shop. If you need new accounts, be sure to get the sign-up bonuses there. For that, go to the props tab on ETR, go to the section titled Sign Up Bonus by State. Find your state/site you want to sign up for. Links are there for the bonuses. All right, boys, let's start with MVP here, where Drake May has come from all the way back when Silva first mentioned it at 80-1 over the summer to now be the favorite at 3-1. I want to be clear, we are recording this Thursday around 3 p.m. Eastern. The Patriots play tonight. And this stuff is really, really fragile. Let's say the Jets pull an upset tonight. I don't think they will, but let's say the Jets pull an upset tonight. Drake May could go from 3-1 to like 12-1 in the flash of a second. And so a lot of this stuff is going to be tied to wins. We now have 6 guys here, Reynolds, at pretty short odds. This late in the season, you don't normally see that. We're going to get to a lot of awards here today where there's like 2 or 3 guys that are in the mix and everybody else is a turbo long shot. At MVP, you can make a legit case for all 6 of these guys. So, Ryan, how are you seeing MVP right now?
I think I pretty much agree with the market for the most part, although I do think Stafford has a bit of an edge on May. You know, he's the leader in touchdown passes by 5, and he's, played one fewer game than May and a few other guys. So, plus I think if you look at who voted for who in last year's race, I think most of the people that voted for Josh Allen would vote for Stafford if the season ended today, just because of the legacy angle and all those things. So that's one stance I have. 2 others, there's 2 guys that I think are a little bit underpriced. Jared Goff. He's at plus 2,500 on FanDuel, plus 2,800 on DraftKings. He has a tough matchup this week against Philly, but statistically, he should be kind of where Sam Darnold is, right around like plus 1,000 is where I'd have him. And the other one, I wrote about him last week. I think I wrote him about him in the column before that. Lamar Jackson has a super outlier path here, where if he just goes nuclear, he has 2 games against the Bengals coming up. It's thin. I normally don't even talk about stuff like this with guys missing 3 games in a year, but if he lights it up and the Ravens only lose 1 more game for the rest of the year, he's going to get votes at the end of the year.
Okay. You brought up Lamar, and before we get to Mark's thoughts here, while we're talking about Lamar, I just wanted to say that when he was out, he got as low as 100-1. It is now 30-1. The problem that Lamar is going to have is counting stats. He missed 3 games, as Ryan said. He's currently 27th in the NFL in passing yards. He's 13th in the NFL in passing touchdowns. He's going to have to make up a ton of ground in the counting stats department. Now, the schedule is absurd. I mean, absolutely absurdly good. They play the Bengals twice. They play the Steelers. I mean, they have like a really, really good schedule for them to try to win out. And obviously, one of the cases that you have for Lamar is, look how bad they played when Lamar was out. We want to talk about valuable, quote unquote valuable. This is one of the worst teams in the league without Lamar Jackson. Now, you could say that about a lot of guys, though, is my problem with that. If Patrick Mahomes got hurt, Chiefs would be one of the worst teams in the league. If Josh got hurt, Bills would be one of the worst teams in the league, right? And so, I would say the same thing about Drake May, and so that argument to me is a little bit thin, but it was obvious because Lamar actually did miss time. He is at 30-1 right now. I think that's okay, but like, I don't know that I can take that knowing that a few weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, there was 100-1 out there, and now I'm going to take the 30. That does not feel good. Mark, anyways, your initial thoughts on MVP race right now?
My approach on the show is a little bit going to be portfolio based. So right now I have a Stafford 18-1 ticket, which we talked about earlier in the season, and Mahomes at 7-1. So I feel decent on those 2 spots. The main guys I'm looking at, I think, are Drake May at 3-1, given how soft the Patriots schedule is the rest of the way. You mentioned they play the Jets tonight. They have not played them yet as well. So they'll get them again another time this season, and just a very soft schedule the rest of the way. They already beat the Bills on the road. They have a Bills game at home, but even splitting, I think the season series with the Bills will lean Drake May's way there. I do think Stafford is a great competitor up top too, and he does lead the NFL in touchdown passes at 25 right now. I think I was looking back historically through the quarterbacks that had won. Rodgers won with 48 in 2020. No one else has had more than 43 since Mahomes in 2018. So I think if Stafford gets up to like the upper 40s, then it's going to be hard for the voters to not give it to Stafford there with how successful the Rams offense has been this season. And then I do think the favorites are appropriate right now. Looking at long shots, Justin Herbert at 25-1 actually stuck out to me a little bit, just because the Chargers are still 7-3 despite their offensive line being decimated. The Broncos are 8-2, but I've gotten there on some very, very close wins, and I think the Chargers could potentially win the AFC West. Obviously, I'm worried about their offensive line and the success that Herbert could have down the stretch. But right now, Justin Herbert has more passing yards and the same amount of passing touchdowns as Drake May. He leads all quarterbacks in rushing yards, does Justin Herbert, which I was surprised to see as well, more than Drake May, who is lauded for all of his scrambling. Justin Herbert has more rushing yards than Drake May this season. And so I think if the Chargers were to win the AFC West, that Justin Herbert could get there. But they do have a very tough schedule left, and so it is a bit of a longer shot. But I think at 25-1, that is something I will add to my portfolio at this point in time.
I mean, the thing about Drake May is, as Mark said, Jets, Bengals, Giants next 3 games. Then Bills, Ravens, Jets, Dolphins to finish it. I mean, if this team ends up winning 15 games, 14 games, that is a huge feather in the cap of Drake May. The other thing that I would say about Matthew Stafford, I think there is some career achievement award possibility here where if it's close, Matthew Stafford has had such a ridiculous year. All these guys that vote in these awards, they know Matthew Stafford. They love Matthew Stafford. He's been a good dude. Like, I could see that mattering if it's close in the end there for Stafford also. The other thing about MVP I wanted to bring up, Ryan, if there was a year, and listen, I'm hesitant to even go down this path, but if there was a year for a running back to be the NFL's most valuable award, it would be a year in which no quarterback separates. And as we sit here ahead of week 11, I'm not sure that a quarterback has really separated. Yes, May, Stafford, Darnold have had incredible seasons relative, I think, to expectation at a minimum, but no one's really separated. And so if you want to go by that, you could say JT has had an outrageous season. My problem with JT, and listen, I'm not taking him at 5-1, but my problem is, again, the last time a non-quarterback won this award was 2012. Adrian Peterson won it. CMC in 2023, I thought he had a reasonable case. He had over 2,000 total yards, 21 touchdowns. He got 0 first place votes. He finished 3rd when Lamar won. In 2024, last year, Saquon had 2,005 rushing yards, 15 touchdowns. Team won 14 games. Saquon also got 0 first place votes. And so what does JT have to do to win this award? If running for over 2,000 yards and winning 14 games isn't enough to even get a single first game vote, then how can JT win this, especially when team hasn't had their bye yet? And after the bye, Colts are going to play at Chiefs versus Texans, at Jaguars, at Seahawks. And you could see where maybe the statistical case comes down a little bit. And the other thing you get at the running back spot is these voters are like, I can't vote running back MVP. I'll just vote JT Offensive Player of the Year. And we'll get to that market here in a second. So, Ryan, what do you think about the people who say JT is actually the most valuable player in the NFL this year?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't have him on top. Just like from a process standpoint, it's going to be quarterback or bust for me. If a running back happens to win, I won't have a winning ticket that year. That's fine with me. But I think path-wise, like you said, the schedule's much tougher in the second half of the year. So I think production could shrink. The one thing that makes this curious is, say he rushes for 2,000 yards and he has 25 touchdowns. And say like Stafford ends up with 39 touchdowns instead of, like Mark said, like I think Stafford's going to end up in the mid-40s. And if he hits that, like he's going to get votes, no question. I think Taylor to even be in the conversation at that point, you're going to need 2,000 yards, 25 touchdowns. Not off the table, but, I that's a lot.
I mean, it's not off the table. And if he can do it in these tougher matchups, maybe I would have an even better case for him. I mean, God, you say 2,000 yards. He already has 1139.
Yeah.
I mean, he's only played 10 games and he already has 1139. So, yeah, obviously a lot can happen here. Last thing I would say about this is it can get real hairy down the stretch. In other words, Sam Darnold last year for the Vikings had a ridiculous season, has a couple bad games at the end. He ended up finishing 10th I mean, he hardly even got a second or third place vote, did Darnold. And so these guys that are fragile, like, I feel like the voters need to see more from Drake May, more from Sam Darnold, more from Jared Goff if they're going to win it. Then, like, Lamar's allowed to have a bad game. Josh is allowed to have a bad game. You know, if Darnold had 2 bad games last year at the end, he went from like one of the favorites to not even getting a vote. So that's the last thing I'd say there, that I think May and Darnold, who's honestly has a decent case on his own right. I think Darnold does, but they need a little bit more. Mark, anything else on MVP before we move on here?
I think your last point is a great one, because I was going to pitch Darnold today, and then when I was looking at previous MVP award winners, it's just all, you know, like historically great quarterbacks and great names. I would say outside of Matt Ryan, who when he won, like the you know, it's Tom Brady, it's Peyton Manning, it's Josh Allen, it's Patrick Mahomes. Like it's these historically great quarterbacks, and Sam Darnold has had, you know, this would be his second successful NFL season at age 28. So I just don't think the voters would end up giving Sam Darnold the MVP when there are other quality candidates that have, as you mentioned, the Stafford Legacy Award. I think is a great point for this year for sure.
All right. Let's keep it moving here to Offensive Player of the Year. And this is what I'm saying. When you're sitting there and you have your voting card, it's like, God, JT, running back, I don't know. Let me just make him Offensive Player of the Year. Now, if you have a take that Offensive Player of the Year is not going to be JT and not going to be JSN, you can get some outrageous prices. JT is minus 320, JSN plus 230. The next ticket, the next guy, Puka, is 50 to 1. I mean, there's like nothing in between. So obviously, I think one of these two guys will win it, but they have to stay healthy. You know, both of them have to stay healthy. The one that stuck out to me, Ryan, on long shot was Jamar Chase at 80 to 1. Jamar Chase is actually on pace for way more catches than JSN, you know, fewer yards. He's going to get Burrow back. Like, you could, on counting stats, Jamar Chase could easily beat Jackson Smith and Jigba down the stretch here. And Jamar Chase is 80 to 1 and JSN is plus 230. So that was the big one that stuck out to me, the Jay Chase at 80 to 1 with maybe Burrow coming back. Reynolds, what do you think about that one? Any other OPOY thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting mark because, like you said, like Taylor's a running back. If Taylor misses 3 games, like, you know, you could have CMC at 80 to 1. You know, that's a fascinating dynamic. And with Chase, I think there's a couple guys that can catch JSN, him and Puka Nacua primarily. But the problem with Chase is, are they going to be a playoff team? That's looking thin. But again, Joe Burrow is apparently like in play to maybe come back on Thanksgiving. If that happens, that's an entirely different ballgame.
I mean, minus 320 when you're one injury away from getting this stuff at 80 to 1, 100 to 1, 51, you know, and if JT stays healthy, I think he's going to win it, you know, but I don't know, Mark, can he stay healthy for the next 7 games? I'm sure we could find some number on that, like try to come up with some modeled number, how likely he is to get hurt. I suspect that whatever model number we came up with would probably show some value on these mega long shots, would not show value on JT at minus 320. So Mark, any more thoughts on OPOY?
That was my exact thought looking at these FanDuel odds last night, is like, man, they're really just betting on Jonathan Taylor or Jackson Smith and Jigba to stay healthy and win this award down the stretch. And I guess it's not necessarily pricing just one of them to get hurt, but both of them to get hurt. But at 50 to 1 or 80 to 1, you know, I think I'm willing to take that risk. It's much shorter odds on other books. I believe DraftKings is closer to like 20 to 1 on both Jamar Chase and Christian McCaffrey. So I think if you're betting this, definitely bet, you know, on FanDuel there at 80 to 1. Otherwise, portfolio tickets I do have JT at 4 to 1, Amon-Ra St. Brown at 15 to 1, and Puka at 3 to 1. So, you know, decent value on JT there left. When looking to add at stuff, I think I might add JSN. He's at plus 280 on Caesars. So, you know, if it is one of JT or JSN, I would you know, make some money on this market. So I'm happy with that myself. I do think CMC at 80 to 1 here is a great bet. Honestly, he's 13th in the NFL right now in receiving yards, and then second in yards from scrimmage behind only Jonathan Taylor. So the rushing touchdowns haven't been there yet for CMC, but you know, those could come in bunches down the stretch for sure. And I think just his yards from scrimmage, his impact in the receiving game, if Jonathan Taylor were to get hurt, I could see Christian McCaffrey potentially climbing up this leaderboard. But you know, the 49ers team success would kind of have to come along for the ride there too.
Yeah, 49ers do have a pretty good schedule. I'll talk about more about that here in a little. The only other guy on my list for this market was Saquon Barkley. Has had a bad year, I think, but still gets Dallas, Chicago, Vegas, Commanders, Bills, Commanders again. And he is down to 150 to 1. And so you could see Saquon, if the offensive line can start to sustain health. I hated seeing Lane Johnson get banged up in that game on Monday night against the Packers. But if the offensive line can sustain health and Saquon can go on one of these runs where he starts breaking long runs, long touchdown runs again, and you get the JT injury, it's a bit of a parlay, but 150 to 1 I thought was at least worth bringing up. Reynolds, any final thoughts here on OPOY before we move on?
No, you guys have covered it. Saquon's interesting, especially because they have a primetime showcase game on Sunday night against Detroit. So if they win and he has like a $120 and 2 touchdowns, he's going to end up being, half that a week from now. So I like that.
Yeah. JT does have a bye this week, by the way. So like anyone who has a huge game this week is going to gain on JT, who has a bye here in this market. All right. Let's go to a very difficult one. Actually, no. Let's stick with Defensive Player of the Year here for now. Defensive Player of the Year. So obviously, we've talked a lot about the Nick Bonito stuff. He is hovering around 6 to 1. I was watching that. I forget what week it was. Micah Parsons had like 5 sacks in one game or in one half or something crazy and like won the game for them. I was like, it's over. It's over. But that was early, and so there's a lot of time here for Nick Bonito or anyone else to get back to the top. Parsons isn't even the favorite right now. Myles Garrett is the favorite. Myles Garrett leads the NFL in sacks with 11. I believe he's tied with Brian Burns, who is there at 30 to 1. So Garrett and Burns are tied for league lead in sacks. Reynolds, what do you think about the current state of the DPOY market?
So it's interesting with Garrett because generally team success is a major factor in this race. So I think he pretty much has to break the sack record to have a real shot here. And same with Burns. So I don't want to quite eliminate Garrett because I think he actually could break the sack record, but I'm looking for other options. I think if the season ended today, I think Bonito should win. And I'm not just saying that because I've worked for you since 2019. I literally think he should win if the season ended today. Parsons and Hutchinson are both, considerably behind him. Like, there's still a lot of game left, but neither one of them have had great first halves.
Yeah.
So I have one value option here. I mentioned him in the column recently. Byron Young's plus 3,300 on FanDuel, and he's plus 7,500 on DraftKings, and he has 9 sacks. Plays for a contending Rams team. I don't think he wins, but again, like he's in that same cluster where I could see him at least getting votes if he continues to produce at this level.
Yeah, and to Ryan's point, like please shop this stuff. Don't take the 33 to 1. You don't find stuff in the NFL where on one side it's 33 to 1 and the other side it's 70 to 1. That just like does not exist. And so, yeah, if Ryan likes it and it's 70 to 1 on one site and 33 to 1 on another site, it's probably decent. Mark, what do you think about DPOY right now?
The Byron Young one, I think he's going to be tough to win because they have to list the team that he plays for next to his name. Not a whole lot of notoriety there for Byron Young, so I think that hurts his case a little bit. But yeah, DPOY I think is tough for sure. I have some longer tickets on Nick Bonito and Will Anderson at 20 to 1 there for Will Anderson. So he's down at 13 to 1. I like these Houston guys a lot. Both he and Danielle Hunter are tied with I think 7 sacks right now. They're in like the top 10 in terms of sacks, and that D-line is just so ferocious. I do think Aiden Hutchinson at 6 to 1 is pretty interesting as well, just because he was kind of on track to win this award last year pre-injury. He leads Brandon Thorne, our colleague here at ETR. He has a true pressure rate. Aiden Hutchinson leads in that category for Thorne. He's at 7 sacks as well and leads the NFL with 4 forced fumbles. And then down the stretch, the Lions have a bunch of primetime games. They have 4 primetime games left on their schedule against the Eagles, Packers, Cowboys, and Vikings. So, I think if Aiden Hutchinson has some big primetime games there, he could easily get up close to Myles Garrett's, atop the sack leaderboard there. And I think just the notoriety around him could lead to some votes.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about Hutchinson in the Comeback Player of the Year award market also, right? And so there's some crossover there where people could be like, well, I'll vote for him here and not there. I'll vote for him not there. I'll vote for him here. I think it's going to be hard for him to win both, right? Like, I don't think a lot of voters are going to want to vote for him in both spots. So we'll talk more about him when we get to Comeback Player of the Year. Reynolds, anything else on DPOY or shall we move on?
No, I mean the one caveat I'll give too is I don't think there's really any secondary or linebacker player that's having a monster year either. So even if the pass rushers are all clustered together at the top, I think one of them ultimately ends up winning.
Yeah, it's not like last year where the pass rushers did not have a great year and Surtain had this outrageous year, allowing him to secure the award. All right. Let's go to offensive rookie of the year. So Emeka Egbuka gets the run out where Mike Evans gets hurt, Chris Godwin gets hurt, Bucky Irving gets hurt, and you have Baker Mayfield throwing you the football. Has Emeka Egbuka been the best rookie? I don't know. I kind of think that Tyler Warren and Dart, and even some guys that don't have a lot of counting stats, like I don't think it's Teteroa McMillan's fault that he doesn't have very good counting stats at all. I think he's had a really good rookie year also. But from a pure counting stat perspective, Egbuka has clearly been the most impressive. And that's why you get him here at minus 170. Godwin may be back soon. Mike Evans might be done, though. You get Dart at plus 230, going to miss this week, but hopefully not beyond that. Reynolds, what do you think about the current state of offensive rookie of the year?
So I think the market's right, but one caveat I'll give, and I wrote this up last week, where just watching Dart every week, like I was not even mildly surprised that he's going to miss time. But if he only misses one game, the thing that I like about Dart, especially if he dips a little bit, is last 4 games are versus Washington, versus Minnesota, at Vegas, versus Dallas. He could go nuclear against 3 of those teams. So if he dips, I'm going to buy Dart.
Yeah, I like that too. Just like it's easier to vote for a quarterback if it's close. The Dart rushing stuff, it reminds me so much of Josh Allen when Josh Allen was young, like just scrambling, designed runs, everything, scoring rushing touchdowns. So I like it. I still think that Tyler Warren has been like one of the best rookies. Counting stats have come down a little bit here. He's down to 6-1. At one point, he was the favorite here in this market. Mark, what do you think about offensive rookie of the year?
For Tyler Warren specifically, I can't get out of my head that Brock Bowers didn't win last year, and I just have pretty much zero hope that Tyler Warren will replicate those numbers. So I think just trying to get in the voters' heads a little bit, I think that is a pretty limiting factor there for Tyler Warren. And then just how dynamic the Colts offense has been in general. They have a lot of great offensive performers at this point in time. So that limits me from liking him quite a bit. I think Egbuka, man, is a pretty strong favorite here for sure. I do have a Dart ticket at plus 550 and then bet Omarion Hampton at plus 500. Those are the 2 tickets I have right now. So I think just kind of let it ride out. With Dart though, I'm curious Ryan's thoughts on the Giants have 2 wins right now. If they go 4-13 and Dart still posts these numbers, like can he win still at quarterback with that being I think voters will probably take like quarterback wins into account there. Do you think he could still win if they only won like 4 games?
Yes, 2 things. The 2 rookie of the year races, the 2 races where team success is not like a slam dunk factor. It matters and everything else. The other one is the media is absolutely loves this guy. Yeah. Like, you watch a Giants game and they're comparing him to Josh Allen and Tom Brady. Like they love him. So I think he can, even if they're a 4 or 5 win team at the end of the year.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, so the top of the board I think is pretty fair. I think Egbuka and Dart are the 2 that I think are most likely to win. Looking at some long shots to add to the portfolio on just long shot basis. Travion Henderson is 40-1 right now, and we've mentioned that game against the Jets tonight. He ripped 2 long touchdown runs against the Buccaneers. I do think there's a chance he could consolidate more work down the stretch from Ramondre Stevenson. There have been reports that Ramondre is going to take over the lead back role, which I don't love, but I think it's a relatively weak race for offensive rookie of the year compared to what we've seen in previous seasons. So I think long shots are still in play here. And then RJ Harvey is 80-1. And we have the news that J.K. Dobbins just got hurt. He's a potential IR candidate, and that, Sean Payton said the majority of the work would go to RJ Harvey, but he's really far behind in terms of counting stats right now, halfway through the season. So I do think it is a pretty big long shot, but at 80-1, I think it's fine to sprinkle on RJ Harvey if he has like an amazing end of season stretch there for the Broncos.
Yeah, both those guys were on my list, Travion and Harvey. The thing about counting stats on Harvey, somehow he already has 6 touchdowns. I don't know how. He's only touched the ball, I think, like 75 times all season or something. Yeah, 75 touches this season for RJ Harvey. And he has 6 touchdowns already. So, like, if he's the starter, which I think he will be once this J.K. Dobbins news, if it becomes official, he could get 6 more touchdowns easily. And at that point, he has 12 touchdowns, and maybe he has a bunch of 100-yard games down the stretch. I thought the RJ Harvey one at 81 was at least interesting. Last one, I already have like 300 to 1 on this guy, or maybe it was 200 to 1, but Woody Marks appears to be taking over this backfield. I understand that it happened in the game that they were trailing a lot in, but there were other signs that they were moving towards him anyways. He started the game. He stayed in for goal line work. And so if Woody Marks is going to be the feature back here down the stretch, he's 175 to 1. You know, I would make that closer to 100 to 1 or something. You know, it still only happens 1 out of 100 times. It's not the best bet, but it's better than, 175 to 1. I think it's still a pretty good price there on him. Reynolds, any final thoughts on rookie of the year?
Yeah, real quick, like the running backs, Henderson, Genty, Harvey, Marks, I all think that they're interesting long shots. If anyone's going to catch up to the favorites, it's them. With Morin, going to back Mark up here a little bit. Not only do I agree with him that I don't think voters that passed on Brock Bowers are going to vote for him this year, a tight end's never won this award. I don't think they're going to make him the first one.
That's an insult to me personally and to Penn State as a whole. Okay. Let's go to a tough one here. Defensive rookie of the year. So Carson Schlesinger is, I'm sure I butchered that name, but Carson Schlesinger is the favorite here. He is only 19th in the NFL in tackles. He has 1.5 sacks. He has 1 interception, and he's the favorite. The second favorite is Abdul Carter, who has a 0.5 sack all season. I mean, speaking of Penn State, how does Abdul Carter only have a 0.5 sack in this entire season? He's still the second choice, despite having 0.5 sack this season. So to me, this is a market where there are 2 weak, vulnerable favorites, and these are our favorite markets to try to attack. I don't know if you agree there, Reynolds, but what do you think about the top of the board at Defensive Rookie of the Year, and any other thoughts?
I definitely agree. Seahawks safety Nick Amawari has played 6 games and he's third in this market. It's odd. Like, I think I've liked Jihad Campbell and Carter the whole way. You know, if Carter dips at all, I'm going to take a shot on him just because his profile is the profile that generally wins here. And that same soft schedule that applies for Dart applies for Carter too. So if he has 5 sacks in the last 4 weeks, I think he could end up taking this home from that. So looking for any kind of dip that happens with him. And I like Campbell at 7-1 for the contending Eagles.
Yeah, to be clear on Jihad Campbell, he's 7-1 right now on FanDuel. He's PFF's top graded rookie, and like they have a very good defense. They're going to win a lot of games. I'm surprised he's not the favorite, I guess, is kind of my point on Jihad Campbell. So yeah, I think the 7-1 there looks pretty decent to me. Mark, any thoughts on Defensive Rookie of the Year?
It's a tricky market for sure. Carson Schlesinger has, I believe, 74 tackles and Jihad Campbell has 50. So, since they do play similar positions, I understand why Schlesinger is the favorite just on counting stats there alone, when there's not a whole lot of defensive, counting stats to get behind naturally for linebackers. Some of the long shot, it's funny because I have different opinions than you guys on the long shots here, where we're typically aligned. I think Malachi Starks is pretty interesting for the Ravens. He's at 22-1 right now. He actually has more tackles than Jihad Campbell, and he plays safety rather than linebacker. So I just found that a little bit interesting. He also has 2 interceptions. We've mentioned Baltimore's easy schedule down the stretch, and like if they go 7-1 in their final 8 games and win that division, I've heard some analysts talk up Malachi Starks as well there. I think their defense is coming along quite a bit. So yeah, him at 22-1 is kind of the only one that I thought was interesting, but certainly a tricky one.
Okay, yeah, I like that. And honestly, I like a lot of these long shots just because the favorites are so weak. One that isn't a long shot on FanDuel, but is elsewhere. Jalen Walker is only 9-1 on FanDuel, but he is 16. There's some 16-1 out there, and there's 13-1 on DraftKings. Jalen Walker is someone that these voters know. He was the number 15 overall pick. He already has 4 sacks. Falcons defense has overperformed at times. And so, yeah, just on raw sack numbers. I mean, Jalen Walker has 3.5 more sacks right now than Abdul Carter. Why is Jalen Walker 16-1 and Abdul Carter is plus 380? I didn't really understand that one. And then the last long shot that I'll throw out, Will Johnson is 50-1. He's only played in 6 games. He doesn't have interception, but he's played well so far. And again, Will Johnson's another guy that these voters know from his stardom at Michigan, projected first-round pick who slipped in the draft due to injury concerns there. So yeah, Ryan, any thoughts on those guys or any other defensive rookie of the year thoughts.
I like Starks. That was sharp. I hadn't thought of that. Walker was a guy I had on my list, so I'm on board with that too. And if there's going to be a year to draft, like to put some money on a long shot that plays defensive back, that's grading well and has good advanced metrics, it's this one because the pass rushers aren't really getting it done.
Yeah. Why does Abdul Carter only have half sack? I'll ask Giants laundry bro Ryan Reynolds. How is it possible that Abdul Carter, who honestly was one of the most dominant defensive linemen I've seen at the college level at Penn State, how does he have a half a sack this season?
Yeah, I mean, that whole pass rush in general outside of Brian Burns has been a little bit underwhelming. So how I'd frame Carter's first half of his rookie season is he's both been fine and disappointing. I'm pretty sure he has good pressure numbers, but it's like I said, man, it's been disappointing. And that's why I said, like, I could see a late season surge coming out of Carter too, though.
Yeah. Parker Washington has been the highlight for Penn State this season. The college team is terrible. The guys in the pros are terrible. Parker Washington is all we have. Okay. Let's go to coach of the year. So this is, as I've said a few times, I've gotten burned on this market so many times betting stuff too early. But now I'm kind of stuck holding the bag here because three guys look like the far and away best candidates. Vrabel's done an incredible job with the Patriots. Steichen, to me, has done an even better job with the Colts. And Mike Macdonald's done an incredible job with both the defense and getting Sam Darnold and JSN on this kind of historic-ish season here. If you don't like one of those three guys, you're going to get an incredible number. I mean, the next choice is Sean McVay, 25-1, Ben Johnson, 25-1. So, Reynolds, what do you think about coach of the year right now? I feel like we kind of missed the boat here because there's really only three guys that seem to have a chance, at least right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that the 6-3 Bears, or you can get Ben Johnson at plus 2,500, and I'd probably be a little scared to bet on him given the strength of the top three guys. Same with you brought up Shanahan the last time we did the show. The overcoming injuries angle. Like, they make the playoffs. He's not only is he a guy who would qualify with that, he quote unquote deserves it, but it's going to be very hard to beat Steichen if the Colts win the division, which it looks like an absolute disaster is going to have to happen for that to not go down. I also would have him ahead of Vrabel, so that's curious. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be very hard for anyone to beat Vrabel or Steichen.
Yeah, the Kyle Shanahan thing, like, they do have a very soft schedule, and he's down to 30-1 now. They'd have to probably win the rest of their games, like Arizona, Carolina, Cleveland, Tennessee, Indy, Chicago, Seattle in the finale. They would have 13 wins. They will have dealt with an insane amount of injuries, but clearly, if Vrabel or Steichen or McDonald get to 13 wins, I think they probably win it over Shanahan here. Mark, any more thoughts on coach of the year?
So the only portfolio tickets I have on this right now are Mike Macdonald at 10-1 and Brian Schottenheimer at 45-1. So I'm looking to add some more long shots here. I do think the top of the board is very strong, as you guys have alluded to, but Dan Campbell at 33-1 on FanDuel stuck out to me. He's also 40-1 on DraftKings, and I think there is some narrative here with him taking over the play calling. Again, they lost both coordinators in the offseason, so it's not like the Lions are like underdogs that are having this surprising great season, which is usually who wins coach of the year. But I think Dan Campbell, if he takes over offensive play calling for the rest of the season and the Lions offense goes on a tear, then I think he could get some love. And just overall, the past few seasons for the Lions have been so successful, and Campbell has yet to win a Coach of the Year award. So, maybe a slight nudge in his favor in that regard too. And then the number one seed in the NFC is just still attainable there for Detroit. So I kind of think that is interesting. And then Jim Harbaugh is 50-1 on FanDuel. And I mentioned, the Chargers could still win the AFC West. The Chargers are plus 310 to win the AFC West right now, and Jim Harbaugh is 50-1 for Coach of the Year. So I just thought that was an interesting discrepancy. Obviously, it doesn't line up very perfectly at all. But if the Chargers were to beat the Chiefs and the Broncos in the AFC West, given the state of their offensive line, I think Harbaugh at 50-1 is an okay long shot there.
Last thought for me is at the top. I just want to be clear. If I was voting now today, I would vote for Steichen. But projecting for the rest of season, I think Vrabel is way more likely to win games than Steichen. In other words, Patriots schedule versus Colts schedule is starkly different. And so, yeah, I would actually, if I didn't have any tickets and I don't have any tickets, I'm kind of more interested in Vrabel than Steichen. Looks like the best price out there is around plus 140 right now on Vrabel. Best price on Steichen is plus 175. But yeah, that, when you're betting coach, just you have to keep in mind you're betting the team, because this stuff just fluctuates wildly on wins. That's all that these people are looking at. It's just wins. It's not how good a job the coach is doing, or it's just wins over what people's perception of a team is. And people's perception on the Patriots was not that high coming into the season. They're going to win. I mean, with their schedule, they're going to win 13 games, man. I'm pretty sure they are. That would look really dumb if they lose to the Jets tonight and people don't listen to this until Friday. Okay. Last one here. Oh, comeback. Our favorite category. I know we talked about this last time. I don't see how it's not McCaffrey. He only played in 4 games last year. It felt like his career was in jeopardy. He was going overseas to get these like weird injections and stuff like that. And now he's back. He's barely missed snaps, let alone hasn't missed practice, hasn't missed games. And so that alone to me is like enough to vote for him for comeback player of the year. And then also, as we talked about, he's been one of the best fantasy players, period. One of the most consistent fantasy players and one of the best. So I actually would have the gap wider than it is in the market right now. I think McCaffrey should be like minus money. And then you have Dak and Hutchinson behind him. Reynolds, what do you think about comeback player of the year?
Yeah, I agree. I think McCaffrey should be like minus 110 right now. Household name, could have 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000 yards receiving. Dak's Cowboys, if the Cowboys don't make the playoffs, and that looks like that's like a narrow path at this point, that's team success has been a requirement for quarterbacks in this race. So I'm at least close to eliminating them. How I would have it is McCaffrey minus 110, and I'd have Hutchinson like plus 180 is how I'd have this.
Yeah.
And Daniel Jones, we eliminated him last time because he's not coming back from an injury.
Right. His injury was 2 years ago. Last year, he was just sucking or whatever. And so we know now that you will not win this award for coming back from sucking. Yeah. I mean, if you think Hutchinson should be plus 170 or whatever, you can get plus 425 right now on Hutchinson. However, if you're going to vote for Hutchinson for DPOY, are you also going to write him for comeback? And that's where I start to get a little bit hairy on Hutchinson here. Still think the 4-1 is probably good, but I'm a little bit hairy on that. I know, Mark, you talked about Hutchinson for DPOY. What do you think about Hutchinson comeback here, and any other comeback thoughts?
Comeback is definitely a tough market. When looking at the board, I thought it was pretty thin, and there's not really much I wanted to bet right now. So I think Hutchinson, he's probably fine to bet for comeback player of the year. I think if he had a strong enough season to be in the running for defensive player of the year, I think people would be okay voting him for comeback player of the year as well, especially if CMC or Dak fall off a little bit down the stretch. So I don't think it's necessarily mutually exclusive there, but could be wrong for sure. The only long shot that stuck out to me was Chris Olave at 150 to 1. Came back from multiple concussions last season. Right now, Olave is 7th in the NFL in receptions and 11th in receiving yards. Could just get an outrageous target share down the stretch with Rashid Shaheed now traded to Seattle, and just some of the guys around him. Like on DraftKings, Hunter Renfrow is 150 to 1 to win this award, the same price as Chris Olave. Hunter Renfrow, what the heck is up with that? Brandon Ayuk is 150 to 1, who probably won't play a game until week 14. So Chris Olave 150 to 1. I mean, just got to sprinkle a little bit on that and count my CLV as the season goes along.
Yeah, think about if you're working at one of these books, you have a very automated process for coming up with lines. There is no automated process for coming up with awards market lines. And that's why you see things like, I don't know, let's just make Hunter Renfrow 150 to 1 and Chris Olave 150 to 1, whatever. And so that's why it's so great. But yeah, this is a tough one. I might bet some McCaffrey here at plus 120, just to shove it down the throat, right down the gullet of people who say they can predict injuries, just right down the gullet on McCaffrey staying healthy for this whole season. Any final thoughts on comeback here, Ryan, before we get out of here?
No, I might bet on CMC myself as soon as we're done recording.
All right. That is going to do it for a mid-season look at the NFL awards. Maybe we'll pop back on here late in the season if there's anything interesting, but as it gets narrower, there's going to be fewer and fewer long shots that are viable. The market's going to get tougher and tougher, so we'll see. Be sure to stay tuned to Ryan's article, which comes out bi-weekly on the site. Ryan, tell the people where they can find you on the social machine if you want to be found.
You can find me at Ryan Reynolds NFL on Twitter.
Ryan Reynolds NFL on Twitter. And Mark, tell the people where they can find you.
At Mark Dank on Twitter there.
At Mark Dank. For Ryan. For Mark. Producer Luke. For producer Ryan. I'm Adam. Good luck, everybody.